Have you ever wondered why your favourite guitar players seem to play effortlessly across the fretboard while you feel trapped? Well, I used to feel this for years until I discovered a system that many pros use that transformed my playing. It's called the CAGED system. In this video, you're going to learn what the CAGED system is, the steps you'll need in order to learn it, and I'll give you some practical ways to use it with real song examples. First of all, what is the CAGED system? So the CAGED system is based around the 5 essential shapes: C major, A major, G major, E major, and D major. The idea is that, for an example, if we're in the key of C, we can play C major in 5 different positions on the fretboard. C using the C shape, C using the A shape, C using the G shape, C using the E shape, and C using the D shape. Now you can do this with each of the other shapes as well as all other keys. Step number 1, understand the root notes. So to be able to comfortably play in every position in any key, first of all, we need to understand where the root notes are within each chord shape. C major, the root note is on the 5th string. A major, the root note is on the 5th string. G major, the root note is on the 6th string. E major, the root note is on the 6th string. And D major, the root note is on the 4th string. So the C and the A shapes are connected as they share the same root note off the 5th string. The G and the E shapes are connected because they both share the same root note off the 6th string. And then the D shape stands alone on the 4th string. So let's go back to the key of C and let's see how I did that, where I went through 5 positions of C major. So we're going to start off with the C shape. So C major using the C shape is just our open position, nice and easy. So the next letter of CAGED is the A shape. So what we do, we take the A chord down here, open position, then we move it up 1 fret. You might have seen this chord shape before. And then if we move it up again, we get the chord of B because our root note is here. And then finally we get up to the 3rd fret, which is our root note of C. So this is a C major using the A shape. So after that, we then need to go to the G shape. Now we know the G shape, the root note is on the 6th string. So we need to find out where C is on the 6th. So here's our C note. Then I need to make a C chord using the G shape. So here's G. I move it up, keep moving it up until I get to my root note on the 8th fret, and then I'm barring the 5th fret. Now I'd never play it like that, but we do need to learn it like this so we can visualize everything later on. However, I will give you some different inversions of this chord when we look at the real song examples towards the end. Next is the E shape. So E major is off the 6th string. So here's our E major shape. So we're moving that up 1 fret. And we keep moving that up until we get to that 8th fret again. And that's our C major using the E shape. Last one is the D shape. D is rooted off the 4th string. Now a good way or easy way to find the root note on the 4th string, once we've got up to this E shape, the 6th string, we go 2 frets along, 2 strings down, and that gives us a C on the 4th string. Then I place my 1st finger on, and then I'll play the D shape from there. And then I'll end up back where we started with the C shape. Now all the resources for this, tabs and everything will be in the description below so you can actually practice along with it. Now I will very quickly go through the different shapes of CAGED in the same way. So next, if we're in the key of A, how can we play 5 positions of the A major chord? So here's our open A chord. Next letter in CAGED is the G shape. So here's G. I've moved from G, G sharp, A. A major using the G shape, then it's E, again the same root note. So all I do is now I know that I can just simply find the root note on the 6th string, then play our E shape. So I'm thinking above that, and then G is going below. D shape, 2 frets along, 2 strings down, gives me the D shape. Then it's the C shape, 5th string, it's there. That's A major using the C shape. Then back to where we started. Then we have the G shape. So after G is E, root note is there, E shape on. D shape, 2 frets along, 2 strings down. So that's our G major using the D shape. Next shape is C. So there's our root note on the 5th string. And then A shape, then back to our G shape. And we have an E shape, E shape, D shape, A shape, G shape, and then E shape. Good to go backwards as well. Then finally we've got the key of D, and you can see how these are all joining up. Here's the B, using the D shape, C shape, A shape, G shape, E shape, and then back to D shape. Now, like I said before, you can do this in any key, so very quickly, let's take the key of B flat, for example, A shape, so it's G shape after that, then E shape, then the D shape, then the C shape, then the A shape. You might be asking the question, why? Why learn the same thing in 5 different positions? Well, the CAGED system does go a lot deeper than just learning the same shape in 5 positions. Once you have learnt the system in all keys, you can then expand them by learning scales, arpeggios and triads, all in each position. This will help you break out those basic patterns, allowing you to play more melodically across the fretboard and to be able to analyse and understand what your favourite players are doing. That's what I often cover on this channel, so make sure you subscribe. But today we're just going to focus on the chords, and we need to think of ourselves as artists. With a set of colours, we can paint a beautiful picture. But with the right skills, we can actually create different shades of the same colour, allowing us to paint a picture with more interest and more depth. And that's how I see the CAGED system. It's great for exploring different textures, especially if you're in a band situation where you need to get out other people's frequencies. And with the knowledge of all these positions, we can do that and we can explore more sounds. Next, let's look at how to practice in a more practical way. You're not really going to be playing chords like that in everyday playing. So let's look at some chord progressions to utilize this. Now, the first exercise I like to do is just using the same shape but to play a whole chord progression. So let's say we're in the key of C major, and let's do a 1, 5, 4, 5 in the key of C, which is C major to G major, F major to G major. So let's take the chord of C, and we're only allowed to use the C shape to play these 3 different chords. So here's, I'm going to swap to my weaker 3 fingers. There's my C major. The next chord is G, so let's move all the way up to here. G, and down to F, back up to G, and down to C. So next we take the A shape. So here's C major using the A shape, and G, and F, and G. Next is the G shape. So here's G shape, C major, and G. I'll just go all up to here for F, back to G. Super impractical, but it's just a really good exercise. That's really awkward, and I'll show you a different way later on. C major using the E shape. G. And finally we've got the D shape. So here's C major using the D. G major, F major, G major. And for the next exercise, this is what I love to do, is actually limiting myself to a certain position. So I'm allowed to use all shapes, but I'm not allowed to go out of position this time. So let's take a different chord progression. Let's go for A major, E major, D major, E major. So let's start off with the C shape, and this is our starting position. So I'm finding an A major chord, but using the C. So 5th string, A note, and then I'm going backwards to form that C shape. So the next chord is E, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to find an E note closest to this position. That's either on the 6th, the 5th, or the 4th string. And I know the 12th fret here is an E note, so I know I need to play off that. I've got 2 options, the G shape or E shape. The E shape is going to take me out of position, but the G shape is not, so that's going to be my preferred choice. Then it's D. There's my closest D, which is our E shape, and then back to our G shape. So you have this. So the next one could be really easy. I could just play an open A, an open E, an open D, an open E, back to an open A. However, let's just make it a little bit harder. Let's do it all the way up here. So here's an A major, E major, D major, back to E major, and A. Be my first choice to play some of these progressions like this, but it's just a way of visualizing the fretboard. Let's move on to the G shape. So here's A major using the G shape, then I've got E major using the D shape, D major using the C shape, and then back to the D shape, E. Wow, that's really awkward, this one. Right, that one's really difficult. Now we have the E shapes. Here's A major using the E. Then we've got E major, so use my C shape there. D major, A shape, and back to my C shape. And for the last position, we need to find out where A major is by using the D shape. Here's our A major. E major would have to be the A shape. D major would have to be the G shape, and then back to the A shape, or E major. So now let's give you a few real song examples of these chords being used, and I'll also talk about how we can utilise some of these more challenging chords, but make it a lot easier. Let's start off with the two most common shapes, the E and the A shapes. Now there's thousands of songs that just use the E and A shapes. But just an example, let's go through Radiohead Just Intro. Starts off with a C, then goes to E flat, then D, into an F. Now with that, as you can see here, I'm just using my third finger. I'm not actually playing that high string, so that makes it a little bit easier. That's how I like to do it, especially when I go up higher, my fingers will fit in quite nicely. A lot of players play it like that with 3 fingers. You can just use like the bar only without the root note, but mostly it's just those examples there. And for the E shape, I've just chosen Lenny Kravitz's Fly Away. Here A major, B, C, into a G, into a D. All major chords. Now we move on to some of the trickier shapes. So let's talk about C and G. Why not? Let's do them both at the same time. There's one song by the Doobie Brothers, Listen to the Music, that uses both these. It's basically going between an E and an A chord. So rather than just playing it here, we're using the C and the G shapes. So the first chord is E, and this one's an E shape. So if we're playing the way we just learnt, be going between that shape and then this shape. So that's our A major, E shape. So E using the G shape, A using the C shape. But they're not actually doing that. They're actually playing partial chords. So rather than playing that, the guitar player is just playing the 5th string, the 4th string, and the 3rd string. And this is a really common way of playing the G shape. It's much easier and it sounds a lot better, so you haven't got those chances of those notes buzzing at all either. Then we have A major using the C shape. Again, rather than playing the full chord with the bar, you might only need to play these 3 strings, the 4th string, the 3rd string, and the 2nd string. So now you have E major, A major. So the riff goes like this. And finally, the D shape. Now, Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers uses the D shape. So the chorus goes F sharp minor to E, then it goes up to a B, which I used to think was up here, and back to F sharp minor. But when I saw the video, he's actually playing that B chord using a D shape. And he's actually playing it like that, barring that 3rd finger. In theory, you could just play that. That would be a much easier way without the root note. But as you'll see in the video, he's actually doing that. Now very quickly, I just want to talk about minor chords, because I know some of you are going to be like, oh, why didn't he play the minor chords? It's quite simple. We can do the same exercises, go through all those things that I just spoke about using minor chords. However, you'll be thinking, okay, I know A minor is open, I know D minor is open, and I know E minor is open. But what about C minor and G minor? So let's just quickly talk about those two. The difference between a major and minor chord is 1 note. A major chord has a root, a third, and a fifth in it. So here's our C chord. C is our root, E is our third, and G is the fifth. Now to make a minor chord, we need to lower the third down one semitone to make it a flattened third. So here's our root, which stays the same. There's our third, which needs to go down one fret, so E flat, and then G stays the same. Now you'll notice in the full C major chord, we have an open high E. Can't play that. We've got to stop, or we've got to mute that note. We can, however, add that C note back in on the first fret of the B string. Now we can actually make this a maneuverable shape, so if we take that shape here, place it with the 3 weaker fingers. Let's go up to the key of D. This time I need to put my first finger down there on the G string. Up to E minor, F minor, G minor, A minor, B minor, and finally back to C minor. Okay, if we take the chord of G, now G minor, where's the third? So we've got G is the root, B is the third, D is the fifth, we've got G is the root, D is the fifth, and then G is the root note again. If you're playing it like that, now 2 B notes, which is obviously going to be a problem, so I would say for this, use your 3 and 4 fingers. Then we just need to lower this note down one semitone. So that gives you an open G minor chord. They don't tell you that, do they? It is a possible G minor. Let's see if we can make this a maneuverable shape. Let's go to the key of A. So I'll need to move that up. Now I've got a bit of an issue here because I can't really get to that second fret. And there, there's no way I can do that personally. So we're just going to take that same approach as what we did in the G shape major chords and just play a select part of the chord. So you could play pinky finger on the root, and then flat third, fifth, and then root. You can play those four notes. It'll work fine. So let's just move that. A minor, B minor, C minor, D minor, E minor, F minor, G minor. All of this information is going to be completely useless until you know the notes on the guitar without even thinking. And that's why I've created this video up here for you to watch next, where I go through in depth on how to memorize all the notes on the fretboard with some science-based evidence. So go and click on that and I'll see you over there. But remember to discover, learn and create something inspiring today. See you in the next one.